Three people, three different centuries, three moments where survival should have been mathematically impossible, and yet all three walked away. This is the story of what the human body and mind can endure when there is no other option left. Begin in 1809, deep in territory that does not yet have a name on any map. Two frontiersmen guide a canoe up a quiet river, hunting for pelts in a region they both know is not theirs to claim. One of them had, only a few years earlier, walked thousands of miles across an unmapped continent as part of one of history's most famous expeditions, and instead of going home when it ended, he chose to stay behind in the wild, chasing fortune in the fur trade. That choice had already nearly cost him his life once, when a rival tribe put an arrow through his leg and left him to be saved only by allies who happened to be nearby. He knew the risk. He returned anyway. As the canoe rounds a bend in the river, the two men freeze. Hundreds of warriors are waiting on the bank, stepping out from the tree line in near silence. There is no way to run. The frontiersman steers the canoe to shore, hoping calm will buy them a chance. It does not take long before he is stripped of everything he owns, his weapon, his gear, even his clothing. His companion, watching this unfold, refuses to leave the canoe. He is struck for his defiance. In a moment of panic, he reaches for a weapon of his own, and the response is immediate and final. His companion does not survive what follows. The frontiersman expects to be next. Instead, the leader of the group points toward the open plain and tells him simply to run. For a heartbeat, he believes he has been spared. Then he understands the truth. This was never mercy. It was the start of a hunt, and he is the prey. He runs. Barefoot, unarmed, with nothing on his back, he pushes toward a river he remembers lies 6 miles away, his only possible chance. Every stride tears his feet open on rock and thorn. His lungs give out before his legs do, and blood begins running from his nose from the sheer effort. When he finally risks a glance behind him, one pursuer has closed the distance to only 20 yards. There is no more running left in him, so he turns to face what's coming. The sudden reversal catches his pursuer off guard. He stumbles, his weapon breaks in the fall, and in the chaos that follows, the frontiersman ensures the threat does not rise again. He takes a blanket from the ground and keeps moving, because stopping now means the end. He reaches the river with his feet in ruins and his strength nearly gone. The voices behind him are closing in. And then he sees it, a den built into the riverbank by beavers, half submerged. He dives beneath the freezing surface and finds a pocket of air just large enough to breathe through, and he waits. Above him, his hunters search the banks for hours, close enough to hear. He does not move. He barely breathes. When night finally falls and the voices fade, he slips back into the current and swims on. What follows is 11 days alone, with nothing but a stolen blanket, moving through wilderness on roots and whatever else the land offers, covering more than 300 miles on wounded feet before he finally reaches safety. Barely recognizable, but alive. Move forward now, more than a century and a half later, to one of the most isolated places on Earth. A young surgeon has just accepted a 2-year posting at a remote Antarctic research station, the only physician for a crew of 13. For months, everything goes according to plan. Then, one morning, he wakes with a familiar, terrifying set of symptoms: nausea, fever, and a sharp pain low on his right side. He knows immediately what it likely means, and he knows exactly how dangerous it is if he's right. The nearest doctor is over 1,000 miles away. A storm has grounded every aircraft that might otherwise reach him. As his condition worsens by the hour, the crew realizes there is no rescue coming. If something isn't done, they will watch their only doctor die in front of them. So he makes a decision no one else on that continent could make. He will operate on himself. He recruits 3 colleagues, one to hold a mirror, so he can see, one to hand him instruments, one standing by with a dose of adrenaline in case his own body fails him mid-procedure. In the middle of the night, working half-blind through a hand mirror, and eventually, by feel alone, he opens his own abdomen. At one point, he cuts into tissue he never intended to touch and has to stop and repair the damage before he can continue. 40 minutes in, his vision starts to blur and his pulse begins to falter. He forces himself to keep working in short bursts, refusing to let his body shut down before the job is finished. Nearly 2 hours after the first incision, it's over. He closes the wound himself and collapses. Days of fever follow, and for a while it's unclear whether the surgery bought him time or simply delayed the inevitable. But on the 5th day, the fever breaks. Within 2 weeks, he is back on duty, and the story of what he did in that frozen station spreads back to the mainland, where he is later honored for it. The third story begins in the sky. It's Christmas Eve, and a 17-year-old girl sits beside her mother on a flight home to meet her father, who runs a research station deep in the Amazon. The airline they had to book was known for a poor safety record. Every other option was full for the holiday. Half an hour into the flight, the plane enters a violent storm. Lightning flashes around the cabin, luggage is thrown loose, and then comes a deafening impact from outside. Looking out her window, the girl sees the wing on fire. Her mother turns to her and says only that this is the end. Moments later, the aircraft begins tearing itself apart in midair, and the girl is thrown into open sky. Still strapped to her seat, falling toward the rainforest canopy below, she loses consciousness before she lands. She wakes the next morning. Somehow, the canopy and her seat had slowed the fall just enough. She is alive. But alone, no sign of her mother, no sign of anyone. A concussion leaves her disoriented. Her collarbone is broken, her arm is deeply wounded, her vision is compromised because she's lost her glasses in the fall. But she has one advantage almost no other passenger would have had. Years spent living in this exact jungle with her parents had taught her the one rule that matters most. Find a river and follow it. For 10 days she moves through the forest largely alone, living off a single small bag of sweets she found in the wreckage, sleeping in the cold, watching an untreated wound in her arm become infested as the days pass. On the 4th day, she comes across other passengers from the flight who did not survive the fall. The first such sight of her life, and one she has to force herself past in order to keep moving, still hoping against hope that none of them is her mother. By the 10th day, weak and nearly out of strength, she spots a small boat tied along the riverbank and a path leading to an empty hut. Using something she remembered from her father's work with animals, she treats the infestation in her wound herself, enduring the pain, because there is no other option. She falls asleep inside that hut, uncertain if anyone will ever find her. The next morning, she wakes to voices. The men who find her are so startled by her sudden, half-wild appearance that they briefly believe she isn't human at all. She explains, in the only language they share, exactly what happened to her. Within 2 days, she's reunited with her father. Her mother, they later learn, had also survived the initial fall, but was too badly injured to move and was found too late. Of everyone aboard that flight, this girl was the only one who walked out of that jungle alive. She's still alive today. 3 separate stories, 3 different eras, 3 different continents, 3 completely different kinds of danger. A hunt, an operating table with no operator but the patient himself, and a rainforest with no map, and yet each one comes down to the exact same moment, a single person, completely alone, deciding not to stop. So the question worth sitting with isn't how they survived the specific danger in front of them. It's what actually separates the people who make it from the people who don't. Because by every reasonable measure, none of these 3 should have. If you want more stories the history books almost let slip away, this is exactly the kind of thing we dig into here. So stick around.